Waterfalls are one of the most beautiful parts of both real life as well as any fantasy world. Tyria is filled with a wide variety of different, gorgeous, stunning waterfalls across each of its different regions, and today I want to go over my top 10 personal favorite waterfalls across the entirety of Guild Wars 2. Let's get started. In the number 10 spot is the Shaemoor Waterfall, where this is actually a series of 15 or so waterfalls, with the total count changing on how big a drop has to be for you to consider it a waterfall, that are dotted along the small creek that flows from Lake Regent and into the Queensdale River. I pointed out these waterfalls and this creek a couple of times, and for good reason. These are gorgeous. You got a lot of trees, the town of Shaemoor, this fun house with a water wheel, a cute bridge, and of course, all the waterfalls. There are just a wide variety of different elements that come together to make this a beautiful location. Where I do love all the waterfalls here, and they are pretty unique because the creek forks into two different directions before meeting back up again, where the combination of all these different heights, angles, and amounts of flowing water are fantastic. And the creek continues under the small bridge that has another waterfall directly under it, that then goes to probably the best waterfall of the bunch that falls down next to one of my favorite bridges in the entire game. In the number 9 spot is Haebaragi's Tears. I hope I pronounced that name right. This is the only man-made waterfall on this list, unless you consider a redirected river forming new waterfalls as man-made, which I'll talk about in a moment. But this one is located in New Kyning City and is gorgeous. New Kyning as a whole is a technological marvel and is incredibly industrialized, where it makes sense that there would be a major waterfall in the city that doesn't come from a river, where it instead comes from the flowing water found making up the plaza/garden area surrounding the massive jade monument. And I believe the water is pumped up from the ocean and canals, where the water flows eastwards, with the two smaller channels forming small waterfalls of themselves, and the larger central one forming this massive waterfall. It falls all the way down from the Jade Monument Plaza, down into the canals that make up New Kyning City, where it would re-enter the system again to be pumped back up to the upper plaza. The waterfall itself covers the main entrance to the central power station and power plant, which is an important location for the story and also the meta event in this map. Where I like the subtle, natural storytelling that this has, where it's kind of hiding something that may or may not be the best thing for Cantha, alongside the architectural design, where this is covering up something that may be considered unpleasant for people to look at. Also, this waterfall is named after a pretty cool lore character. In the number 8 spot are the Gentle River Waterfalls. Gentle River, this area Timberline Falls, and Timberline Falls as a whole are all locations that I love to talk about because of how beautiful it all is, and these waterfalls are no exception. This area of the world is where the Shiver Peak Mountains are turning into the Steam Spur Mountains, with tall, snow-capped peaks with snowy trees and more, transitioning into green mountains and rolling hills filled with many trees, where you have snow melt coming off of the Shiver Peaks with these waterfalls and into Gentle River. And I just love how there are multiple waterfalls pouring into this river. It's just an all-around beautiful sight, and I think the idea of traveling through this area of the world and looking off to the distance to see these waterfalls is fantastic. But you also got the vista nearby that will take you up nearby the top of the waterfalls, and then it will provide you a great view of the area. In the number 7 spot is the Leopard's Tail Valley Waterfall. All across Tyria you have a variety of frozen waterfalls, some of which are melting and running a bit, and coming across these types of waterfalls are always super fun, but this is the only one that I wanted to throw on this list because I just love it a lot. Just like a lot of these waterfalls, this one is along a river that I love a lot, where I just love how this area looks with this waterfall, the bridge, the patches of grass, and all the snow leopards, and everything else. But this waterfall really brings it together, where actually it is a little bit different compared to other frozen waterfalls that you can find in the game, because I think technically in the lore you have a bit of a river going further up into the mountain, where you have some snow melt that contributes to this as well. But a good chunk of water flowing here is actually coming directly from the icicles, which are also melting, and I just love how unique and special this is compared to other icy waterfalls in the game and waterfalls in general. In the number 6 spot are the Lake Lutgardis Waterfalls. These are some gorgeous waterfalls from the End of Dragons expansion that are located in the Echovald Wilds. You have Mori Village in the southeastern corner, which is on the edge of Lake Lutgardis. The Lake of Wish is a really cool area that I have spent a ton of time fishing at, and also has a vista, an event, and some other stuff around here. But coming into the lake are a few different waterfalls. Now when we look at these waterfalls, you can find them all along the southern mountain face, and there are quite a few. On the eastern end, closer to Mori Village, you have a collection of a few smaller waterfalls, but then further west you have a set of 2 gigantic waterfalls, and all of them are honestly fantastic. I remember exploring this area when End of Dragons originally released and having my breath taken away because of this area. you have these massive ancient ruins dotted along the stone trees with the massive mountains around here. But the best part are these waterfalls. I love the beauty of the small waterfalls and how they pour into the lake, and I love the majesty and epicness of the two larger waterfalls and how they dominate this area. In the number 5 spot are the Elon Falls. These are absolutely incredible waterfalls found in the Elon Riverlands and the Desolation. And these are the waterfalls that I alluded to earlier, where these only exist because this river was redirected. The Elon River used to only flow south through Vabi and Kurna, but Palawajoko redirected the river to cut off the Elonians from the river, which caused a drought in the Elonian nations. But with the river being redirected, it began to flow into the Crystal Desert, causing quite a bit of devastation to the area, but also allowing life to grow along the river that was previously incredibly arid. But as the river flowed through the Crystal Desert, it went along the most natural route, which formed these waterfalls. You can also find a couple of waterfalls that are part of these falls, located further south in the corner of the Desolation. So these waterfalls are special because they can be found in 2 different maps, but they are also special just because of how epic they are. While you have some smaller waterfalls, the majority of the falls here are just massive. They aren't the tallest waterfalls on this list. They're significantly less tall than the Lutgardis waterfalls we just talked about, but they are super wide, where these may be the widest waterfalls in the entire game, and they're just super special to me. Similar to the Lutgardis waterfalls again, I was dumbfounded when I was exploring Path of Fire for the first time because of how epic they look. In the number 4 spot are the Strawberry Garden waterfalls. The Strawberry Garden is one of my favorite hidden areas in the entire game that I have highlighted a few times on my channel. Where in Diasa Plateau, you can find the town of Nolan, and in the corner of these ruins, you can find a massive trash heap with a vista, where many people know that you can make a few small jumps to get into this pipe that allows you to travel into this absolutely gorgeous area. You have a very beautiful vale with sun beaming in, many different trees, and some more piles of scrap. In the center, you have Anya tending her little strawberry garden, and all around are a ton of trees and waterfalls. All of the waterfalls are flowing in from all of the different angles of this area, and the water is collecting at the bottom. You have a very beautiful traditional waterfall flowing in from the west side, but you also got this waterfall flowing in through this old Ascalonian wall, and you got a couple of waterfalls flowing from these old pipes. You could also look at how the water is flowing down, where you have a few smaller waterfalls as the water makes its way downwards. And all this is an absolutely gorgeous area with a bunch of incredible waterfalls. In the number 3 spot is the Alua Falls. This is a gorgeous waterfall located in Dragon's End, making this the 3rd and final waterfall from the Ender Dragons expansion, which turns out to have been a fantastic expansion for waterfalls. But this is a 2-part waterfall flowing down from the high up in the mountains in the northeastern part of the mountains and down into the flooded basin that makes up a large part of this map. You have a short river cutting through the land here that brings the water from the falls into the basin, and directly in front of the waterfall is a gorgeous Canthan bridge that connects the 2 sides of the river together, where all in all, this is just a beautiful waterfall that really stands out to me. But Alua Falls is really cool because it has a bit of lore connected to it that I don't think a lot of people know about, where it is named after Alua, one of the 3 queens who the Luxans worshipped. These were Alua, Alora, and Ione, who are demigoddesses that only the Luxans worshipped alongside the normal pantheon of human gods. Where with the diminishment of Luxan culture because of the actions of Emperor Usoku and the various tragedies related to the concept of purity that have transpired across Canthan's history, these 3 queens have fallen out of Luxan culture. Where there is a lot more story related to Alua and the other demigoddesses that I want to talk about in the future, but I'll leave it at that for now. In the number 2 spot is Verdant Falls. I really try to contain myself on this one with only limiting myself to talk about one very specific thing, but I just can't. There's a lot I want to show. In Drizzlewood Coast, you can find Fort Defiance in the southern parts of the map, and passing by the fort is a beautiful river where going upstream you can find the Verdant Falls. This is a gorgeous waterfall that you can see starting high up in the mountain, flowing down the river a little bit, and coming down the mountain again to the river that you can explore inside of the map. Where overall this is just a gorgeous waterfall that looks super cool and is one of my favorite parts about this map. But the waterfall is falling super fast, and the river here is one of the fastest rivers in the entire game, and it looks super cool. Where you have a group of several different waterfalls here next to this mastery insight, and then another larger waterfall, where this river flows through this canyon and under the bridge connected to Fort Defiance, where we find another massive waterfall located next to another mastery insight, where this waterfall is flowing into Breakwood Basin, which is the center of the southern area of this map, and this basin has a ton of different waterfalls flowing into it from various different angles. where the basin and all the various waterfalls around here are super cool, but Verdant Falls and all the other waterfalls along this river are some of my favorite waterfalls in the entire game. Okay, I have mentioned a couple of honorable mentions in various top 10 videos I have made, but believe me when I say that I had a super difficult time with this top 10 list, where I feel like I wouldn't be doing the waterfalls of Tyria justice without highlighting many other ones that I have on my honorable mentions list. So here's a speed round. Arundon Vale, gorgeous. The Green Grotto, another incredible one. Joyless Falls, another one of those fantastic frozen ones. Arcallion Digs, a beautiful one that acts as an out of the map decoration that I talked about recently. The Verdence, so nostalgic. The Garden of Dawn, I mean come on, this one could be in the number 1 spot. Fort Salma, another super nostalgic one for me, especially with the event at this bridge. Cereboth Canyon, a gorgeous waterfall that I love to highlight in my videos. The Maguuma Shallows and the waterfalls going into Tarir, both fantastic ones. Beggar's Burrows, a couple of great waterfalls that I love a lot. Okay, now for the number 1 spot, for my favorite waterfall across all of Guild Wars 2, and it has got to go to the Rilohn Falls. Whenever I think of waterfalls in Guild Wars 2, this is where my brain instantly goes. This is just one of the most iconic waterfalls in the game, and it is pretty incredible. Where this is a waterfall that is along the Elon River, where the river was originally flowing south through Vale and Kurna until Palawa Joko redirected it westwards, but with Krakatork's flight southwards, the dam that Palawa Joko had constructed was presumably destroyed, and the river was allowed to flow south again alongside its flow west, where there are many cool parts along this river, and this waterfall is one of my favorites. Where it is located at the Fortress of Jahai, which is one of the most lore important locations in the entire game, where the river flows through the fortress and over the cliff face here, down into the shores by the Yatendi village, where I really enjoy this area because you have the village going up the mountain on the right, and then you have this massive waterfall on the left with the fortress above it, and it just feels fantastic. Where of course, the waterfall itself is definitely beautiful with how it looks, the different foliage around it, and all of the other decorations surrounding it. At the top, you have some diving goggles that you can use to dive down alongside the waterfall, but hidden behind the waterfall is Afkar, who is an awakened who used to work for a family in the village, but now he wants to spend his last days in solace at this beautiful place. And you can steal his stuff. Where all in all, this is just a fantastic area, and this is my favorite waterfall in the entire game. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. This was a super hard video to make because of how many fantastic waterfalls are in the game. If you enjoyed this type of video, consider watching Top 10 Rivers, which is pretty similar, or feel free to check out Top 10 Mountains, where we go over another important aspect of Tyria's geography. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.